You are welcome again to the course. This is Miss New Dang. Today we want to look at questioning in the classroom. Why do you think questions should be asked in the classroom? Well, questions need to be asked because they help in recalling of what has been taught. They help to stimulate thinking among students. They help to engage students in discussion, and they help to rehearse for tests or exams. Questions need to be asked also because they help the teacher in finding out things he or she didn't know. Let's go on to find out about questioning in the classroom situation. Who are those who ask questions in your classroom? Are students allowed in any way to ask questions? Who are questions addressed to? What are the questions about? Who answers your questions as a teacher? And what would you consider to be a good question? What kinds of questions are frowned on? And what kinds of questions tend to get no answer? In asking effective questions, you need to think about the following. Whenever possible, ask rather than tell in the classroom during teaching. When you ask rather than tell learners, it offers learners the opportunity to reason and also develop critical minds. You know that students are different, as multiple intelligences theory suggested, they have different ways to acquire knowledge or improve their skills. So what should teachers do to arouse their curiosity and facilitate their learning in class? Here are some pieces of advice on how to produce good questions. The first one is to ask one question at a time, and the question must be as concise as possible. Adjust the difficulty of your questions to the students' abilities, working towards the increasingly higher levels of thinking as the learning progresses. You need to include questions that help students to explore their attitudes and feelings as well. Ask questions about processes as well as outcomes, and model the kinds of questions that you want the student to ask themselves in a classroom. Students learn best when teachers, and for the matter, you, maintain a high student interest and engagement in a classroom. And so, you need to ask more higher and lower order questions. You need to create an opportunity that will engage all students, not just volunteers, in discussions. In some classrooms, you will find that teachers are fond of calling only those who raise their hands up. Others are ignored. This must be avoided. Involve all students. That's the point. You need to have higher regard for students and treat them with respect in terms of questions, and actively monitor student progress in the learning process. So, allow students time to think about the questions and respond to the questions. You must also provide clear formative feedback to learners. You need to vary student activities and procedures, and then hold high expectations for them. Above all, you need to build classroom learning communities. You need to create opportunities that will encourage learners to talk among themselves. Also, remember that students learn best when teachers know their subject matter, when teachers are organized, when they are enthusiastic about teaching and their subject career, when teachers develop deep rather than shallow knowledge about the subject matter, when teachers connect new learning to prior learning, as previous knowledge is very important here. When teachers teach at a level that ensures a higher rate of success, when teachers structure learning experiences thoughtfully. Students learn best when teachers ensure that they have sufficient time to practice skills and clearly present both directions and content information. You, as a teacher, need to recognize ideas expressed by every student in your classroom. In other words, everyone's ideas should be considered. Students learn best when their ideas are considered. They also learn best when they are allowed to take risks. When such conditions are created for them to take risks, they ask questions freely without fear. Then, how do you handle the students' wrong answers? In some classrooms in Africa, for instance, students' wrong answers are handled in such a way that students become embarrassed in the classroom. But you need to handle wrong answers positively. At least appreciate the effort of the wrong answer and find a way to help the student to get the right answer. You need to recognize that students build on one another's ideas, and so encourage all students to contribute in a classroom. In this sense, your questions must be evenly distributed. Do not just cater to those who raised their hands up. And then when dealing with students' questions, please allow time for students to think, to reason, to argue, to reflect on the issues. Now, questions about questions. What is a good question? Is it a good question? In some contexts, we know that people answer questions with questions. What purposes do questions serve in your classroom? How many questions do you ask a day? These are things you need to think about. How many of those do you already know the answer to the questions you ask? Who are the students most likely to answer? Who are the students most likely to answer questions in a classroom?
It's a very different feel for a student who's sitting in the back row to have the professor walking up those steps and standing right next to them and treating that as important class space as, quote, the podium.
How often do you encourage students to ask questions of each other? These are all things that are worth considering if you can create a questioning environment in the classroom. Reflect on all that we have talked about in this video within the context of your classroom and find out which are the good ones you think you can practice in your future classroom. Are there any thoughts you can help improve questioning in the classroom? Think about this and share with your classmates. I wish you all the best until we meet in the next lecture. Thank you.